Wow. So I have to follow all of that. My name is Jeff. I represent Emergency in the States. And basically I'm here just to tell you a little bit, just briefly, about Emergency and why we do the work that we do. As we've talked a lot about tonight is the civilian victims of war. And I think it's important to note that in 162 conflicts since the end of World War II, greater than 90% of the victims have been civilian, of which nearly a third of them only children. And today, perhaps maybe more than ever, as the line between military intervention and humanitarian intervention has become blurred, it's become more difficult than ever before to actually reach those who are victims. And so it's out of these realities that Emergency was really created. Our mission is to provide free of charge, high standard medical and surgical care in war-torn areas, but also to promote a culture of peace, solidarity, and respect for human rights. And some of the things that differentiate us, most notably, is that we do not, in any way, shape, or form, align ourselves with military intervention or any government that is also waging war. And we do that as an absolute necessity. And while it's meant at times that sometimes we are not privy to the millions of dollars that go to some other organizations, it has also meant that in Afghanistan, where most other NGOs have been forced out, our emergency facilities have been able to continue operating, and we've been able to treat more than 20% of that country's population. The second thing that really differentiates us is that we don't provide emergency medical relief. And what that means is instead of just getting in, getting out, we provide long-term sustainable interventions that help to develop capacity and build infrastructure in these regions that have really been completely deteriorated as a result of war. And I guess the third major thing that really differentiates us is the manner in which we give care. And that is, we don't provide second-rate care. We don't provide third-world medicine, so to speak, to the third world. As we believe that healthcare is an absolute basic human right, we think that standard of care is also your right. And whether you're a child born in the north of Sudan without a home, or a child born on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, you deserve to be treated. The right to be treated and the right to be cured is your basic human right. And one such facility that we have, actually our latest facility, is the Salam Center for Cardiac Surgery. Salam meaning peace in Arabic. And what this facility is it's, aside from just providing cardiac surgery in Sudan, it's actually linked to emergency clinics in the capital cities of all nine bordering countries, which include DR Congo. And specifically, we're going to try to treat, for instance, basic medical care in all of these satellite clinics, while also being able to follow up and screen for those who are in need of cardiac surgery. And I think usually the question we get, or most often, is why cardiac surgery, especially in Sudan? And aside from the fact that this facility, which is state-of-the-art, which will be the third largest green structure in the world, and within 6 months of opening, will actually begin to put power back in the grid. But aside from what that structure can do to develop infrastructure and to develop capacity so that other types of medical care can actually be built upon it, it's also a statement. And it's a statement of peace, a statement of equality. And as I said, that child in Sudan can receive the same treatment that child in Manhattan can. And that matters. And those are the types of things, for me, that first drew me to Emergency's work. For instance, when I was a child, my mother had put a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on a poster board, and she hung it above my bed, so it's the first thing I saw in the morning and the last thing I saw at night. In fact, my mother was notorious for putting notes everywhere. I was a bad kid, but that quote read that a person had not yet begun to live until they could rise above the narrow confines of their own individual concerns to the broader concerns of humanity. And for my mom, that was life, and either we got it or we didn't. And yet today, and really every day, in numbers unimaginable, people, children, and babies are laid down in their unmarked graves with no one to mourn for them. And that is not respect for human rights. And that is counter to everything that we as people are called upon to be. But I also think it's important that we note that as dark as are the realities and the challenges before us today, that the chance for progress, and really the chance to make this world a better place, are just as great. And in fact, as we look down throughout history, you can see that for all the power of the oppressor and for all the weakness of the oppressed, no oppressive regime has ever withstood the test of time. Not one. And yet every single group and or nation that has sought survival or advancement through the use of physical force and or violence have inevitably reaped what they had sown. They live by the sword, they die by it. It's not a cliche. It's a historical fact. And yet at the same time, people like Howard, people like Martin Luther King, those who fought for justice, who fought with soul force and nonviolence, have inevitably carried their messages on into today. And in fact, even 40 years ago, when Dr. King had the audacity to believe that he could achieve through nonviolence what most people believe would take centuries, if it was even possible at all. And yet today, one of the most, I guess, likely candidates for the presidency of our country is African American. And though there is still a long way to go, the progress in and of itself has been amazing. And so I would ask from everyone here today is that everyone have the audacity to believe that we can end hunger and have the audacity to believe that we can end war. And it was Albert Einstein who said that war cannot be humanized, it can only be abolished. And I think it's important to remember that Einstein was far from a left-wing radical. You know, he was, as most people believe, the most logical thinking mind in the history of our world, and yet when he looked out into the world and came to his conclusion, those were his words. And not only did he believe that ending war was a possibility, he believed it was an absolute necessity. So I really, truly thank all of you for coming here tonight. It was the Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel who said that to remain silent and indifferent was the greatest sin of all. And as evidenced by all of your presence here, you have not remained indifferent, and you care. And what matters the most to the people, the millions of people around the world that go to bed hungry at night, those that are suffering, those that are dying, is to know that they're not forgotten, to know that they matter. And here we are thousands of miles away from them, gathering together to remember them. And not only that, but to learn what it is we can do to help them. So on behalf of Emergency and truly from the bottom of my heart, I thank all of you for coming.